All right, welcome to the next LDT webinar series. I'm here today with Vanessa Alzate, who is just showing up and showing off all over the place. She produced or just published a brand new book. She owns Kirkpatrick and Partners. She focuses on evaluation, although she's done it all, the whole ADDIE model and framework and loop-de-loops, right, with us as instructional designers. And she's been a private business consultant for many years now. And I'm super excited to hear all about the Kirkpatrick model updates. And thank you so much, Vanessa, for joining us today. As you've already heard in our little chit chat beforehand, people are super excited to hear what you have to say here. And we're just very honored that you would take a moment and share some time with us. So thank you.
There's my mute button. Well, I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to be here and giving, the time. I am super thrilled to be here. Love just being able to connect with others, continue to build out my community, let alone Kirkpatrick's. And anytime Lisa asks for anything, I'm gonna say yes. So thank you all for having me. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen before I forget, because that just happened to me. All right. So today, we're going to be spending quite some time just giving you all some updates on the Kirkpatrick model. But, this is going to be, a session that I would love to, it's a more of a conversation, two ways, any sort of feedback, thoughts, questions, populate them into the chat. I will go in and grab them as we go along. Don't feel like you have to wait until the end. Just know that, this is really all about what you all want to get out of this, and not just what I would love to share. So we'll say it's a little bit of both. Just like we heard in the beginning of our conversation, talent development has been under such pressure. I think end of 2023, beginning 2024, those were some of the beginning of the really rough years for us. And I think what's interesting is that we've always been pressured to prove business value, but it is now more imperative than ever. And for me, what I think is so interesting is to hear from so much of the community how much the lack of time, we'll say, that they have for evaluation, and the fact that people want more content, more, but then on the other side of it they say, but I want you, but like, what's the ROI, what's the value, right? And it's quite a push-pull that I know that we get. What I've seen throughout my time now, I'll get into my background in a little bit, but I've seen that most evaluation still focuses on activity and not impact. Leaders are asking for evidence, not necessarily reports. And small and mid-sized teams are expected to do more with less. So this session today is really going to focus on a more modern, practical approach to evaluation, considering the reality we have today. And then Lisa, for the last question before everyone jumped on, I've got something to support, today's reality and evaluation that I think would be very interesting for you all. So for the last 60 years, the Kirkpatrick model has shaped how organizations truly evaluate training. But the reality is most organizations are still using it like it's 1995. And if I was not currently staging my home to sell, you would have seen my love for the 90s back here and all my little like knickknacks, and everyone gets me like some little cute thing from the 90s. So I do have a love for the 90s, but there's some things we could leave in the past, like the clip art. Although I do miss the word paperclip. I miss that being on my screen. But unfortunately, those practices that we have learned back then that we have not evolved for 2026 are not holding up, and we're starting to see the results of those things. Back when we were doing evaluation from the beginning, we were tracking activity, and that's where a lot of organizations still are. They're tracking reporting participation. They're sharing some data, but not the data that's actually influencing any decisions. And in today's world, that's a problem. And this session is about ensuring that we're measuring what matters and how we can use the Kirkpatrick model to be that foundation. So learning teams today, like we said, are under more pressure than ever. Pressure to justify spend, prove value, influence decisions. We just haven't kept pace. And so I'd love to start off with you. In the chat, or if you just want to reflect for a moment, can you share what you are currently, or some of the past data points that you've been reporting to leadership? I'm gonna go ahead and open that chat. I saw a couple of things come through. Awesome, look everyone. Thank you all for sharing your LinkedIn profiles. Yeah, so if in the chat, you could just share some of the things that you typically report to leadership. Or we're a small group, you also come off mute. Butts in seat. Hey, Robbie. Attendance. Yep. Anyone measuring number of hours trained, completion, satisfaction? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Co-pilot usage. Wait, Sarah, I need to hear more about this. Number of hours trained.
I can jump in. Would you like me to talk?
I would love, yes.
It's the worst metric ever. It's terrible. So we're I'm working on digital upskilling for the organization that I work for, and most recently, one of the key metrics they've been looking at is, hey, how often are people using like a tool like Copilot? But I am coaching them to think more broadly around impact, exactly to your point about like, hey, because they could be asking Copilot anything. They could be asking it for like the best restaurant in the city, right? That doesn't do anything for the organization. So yeah, so I'm working hard to try to influence that, and something in progress right now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Copilot usage. Okay. I was actually just on a call yesterday with someone who wants to do a kind of like a baseline AI usage, and then do an evaluation for after implementing some sort of basic AI training. He's like, we've been given AI without any sort of guidelines, training, any sort of support. So we're trying to help them with that. So that is helpful. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we're seeing some test scores, and previously cost savings of revising a quality related training program. Oh, I love that, Geraldine. So of these things that we're measuring, how many of those do you believe actually change executive decisions? I mean, I think Geraldine's wins personally, cost savings. When we look at some of these things, right, satisfaction, co-pilot usage, without actually really digging into more specific, like actual outcomes, a lot of that data doesn't influence any sort of decision. It's not intelligence, it just becomes noise. And when you have so much noise for an organization or an executive to listen to, it becomes really hard, but when they do get the data that they need, for them to actually focus and pay attention to it. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in one of our certification programs, the Silver or Analyst program, is how do you spread out or separate signal from noise. And we have to know that as the learning function, when we're reporting out, we need to be doing that as well for our executives. The least amount of friction, the better. But what do they want to know? Leaders are not asking whether or not people liked the training. They're asking this one question: did it work? I have a little bit of a hot take on did it work. I don't think it's a really great question to be asking, but really what they're asking for is, did performance improve? Did risk decrease? Did revenue increase? Did something essentially meaningful change? And if we can't answer that, our influence that we're struggling to grasp, we can lose that. Now, this is a cycle that most organizations are stuck in. They plan for training, they deliver it, they move on, and they panic when someone asks for impact. I know I have been there. I see Lisa shaking her head, so I feel like I've got some other people here that have been in this same loop. You know, one of the things that I talk a lot about, and to Lisa's point, I've been part of all of the pieces of Addie, right? And I love Addie. She and I have a love-hate relationship. That E being at the end truly kills us on the Kirkpatrick side, because that E, when you logically go through the process, you're like, okay, well, I don't do evaluation till the end, but I don't know about you. If I don't plan for evaluation or like bake it into my design, by the time I'm halfway through the development process, I don't want to look at this program or training anymore. I'm like ready for it to go out. I don't want to see it. I implement and I'm like, goodbye. The thought that I have to actually now go back and design an evaluation, no thank you. And chances are I was always on some sort of next project, and that was already kicking up and probably even a little bit behind, so I didn't even have that chance to go back. And so when we think of the Addie model, what we really have to do is take that E and bring it up to the front. We call it design with the end in mind, because if you don't know exactly where you're going, it becomes harder to influence the rest of the process. And when we are in this training cycle, evaluation becomes reactive, after the fact, defensive, and this isn't a problem with the model, it's actually a systems problem that we have. So here's really what's happening. On one side, what we report is completion, attendance, satisfaction, scores. But what on the other side, what leaders need are things like performance change, behavior adoption, business outcomes. And that gap between those two circles we have here, that's where all of our credibility is lost. And most of us, what we've been reporting are vanity metrics, things that make us feel good as a learning department, because these are the pieces that we can control. And we're going to like kind of hide the other pieces, the ones that actually are going to tell us more about performance and more about the organization and really what our executives need. And so if vanity metrics aren't enough, we replace them with enterprise performance intelligence. Now, performance intelligence is not a dashboard. It's not a report. It's not a tool. It's the ability to continuously answer three questions: what performance needs to change, what behaviors are driving that performance, and what outcomes are we looking for. And this is what the Kirkpatrick model, when applied correctly, actually enables. See, level 4 will define the result. Level 3 then defines the behavior that would influence, when done consistently and properly, those level 4 results. And the environment explains what's helping us or blocking. And then your data becomes a navigation system and not just a report. So let's talk a little bit about the model and the evolution of it. So the model was created back in the 1950s by Dr. John Kirkpatrick. He was a supervisory professor at the University of Wisconsin, and he wanted to know whether or not his training was having any sort of impact. So he did his dissertation on his supervisory training, and he came across the work of Dr. Raymond Katzel and came up with these 4 buckets, right? Reaction, learning, behavior, results. And this was the buckets of data he was going to collect to help tell that story. So years later, Don was asked by ASTD, and we all know it as ETD now, to write an article about his work for the magazine. And in true Don fashion, he said, "I'll do you one better. I will write 4. One on learning, on reaction, learning, behavior, and results." And from there, people in the industry took that and they coined it the Kirkpatrick model. They named them levels, and then they put them into this triangle. And when we talk about this model being the model that the industry built, we truly do mean that, because it was, with them that this has happened and the subsequent evolutions have happened. Now, in around 2008-ish, Dr. Jim Kirkpatrick, Don's son, and Wendy Kaiser Kirkpatrick, Don's daughter-in-law, they modernized the model, focusing on business partnerships, focusing on level 3 and this concept of monitoring and adjusting. And now we've got the newest evolution that expands the model beyond training and into a performance system. And so with that, I introduced myself. My name is Vanessa Alzate. So I'm the owner and CEO of Kirkpatrick Partners and of Anchored Training. So Anchored, we do instructional design and development. I've been in the learning space since 2009. Started off as a software trainer, did onboarding, worked in all different sectors until I finally opened up Anchored in 2018 after having my 2 daughters 1 year and 2 weeks apart. Do not recommend that. Then I acquired Kirkpatrick Partners in 2023. I am a New Jersey native. So I just moved down here to South Florida about 2 years ago, and I live on the East Coast. And a fun fact, my most memorable concert was a private Snoop Dogg concert in Mexico. Actually, I gave this fun fact out yesterday, and the person that was dancing alongside with me, one of my good friends, was on this webinar. So it was super fun to give this fun fact with her there. That is a QR code to my LinkedIn, and I will also throw it into the chat later. Please do connect with me and share your fun fact. I love to continue to grow my community. But one of the things that, if you know anything about me, I've always been a fan of the Kirkpatrick model. When I would use it before I went out my own or through Anchored and the learning strategy that we worked on, I would always go back to the Kirkpatrick model. For me, it was the gold standard of evaluation. And for me, no matter the industry or the customer I was working with or what we were trying to measure, it fit and I could make it fit. And it was flexible and it was simple, so that no matter if the person did or did not have an understanding of evaluation, we were able to speak the same language. There was no need for math anxiety. We weren't doing any sort of complex, calculations. We just wanted to know, was behavior changing? And because of that, what outcomes did we see? And so when I took over KP a couple of years ago, I started really thinking about, what does the next evolution look like? And what needs to be part of that? And so what that brings us to is the Kirkpatrick model of today. And so the Kirkpatrick model of today really focuses on level 3, but this idea of the performance environment and the fact that training alone will never equal direct ROI or a direct line item on the P&L statement. That one time someone sits through training, that's not going to be it. However, we need to include training as part of a holistic solution that attacks problems and tries to solve them and brings the organization together. This version of the model reinforces the fact that this model is not linear. It's a system. And if level 4 isn't clear, level 3 won't be clear. And if level 3 isn't defined, level 2 doesn't even matter. And this is not evaluation mechanics, it's strategic alignment. Now, when we look at the model, the biggest challenge that we see when it comes to the model and evaluation is that folks think of it as after the fact. And they don't think of it as a way to tell you about future roadblocks, to redirect you to ensure you still get to your end goal. And so we have to start thinking of evaluation more like a GPS, right? So when I get into my car, and like I said, I just moved down here, and even places that I go all the time, I still plug in the address of my GPS, because I want to know if something comes up ahead, how to still get to my destination, how to be rerouted. I may know how to get there. Like, trust me, I know how to get to Target, but sometimes it doesn't hurt in case there's a backup. We are in South Florida here. And so I'll always plug in my end destination. That does not change. However, the route may change once we start out in a direction. And that's why we need to have that continuous monitoring and evaluation. And when folks say to me, well, the Kirkpatrick model doesn't work, I'm like, okay, yes, let's talk about the implementation of it. Are you treating it linearly? Yeah. Where do you start? Well, we start with level 1. Okay. And what are you measuring? Well, the trading impact. Okay, well, we also need to measure what's happening once they go out into the environment to have a better understanding of where the breakdown is actually happening, where they're coming up to a roadblock and we're not able to get them around it. And organizations are trying to show or prove straight ROI instead of showing contribution. So there's a whole system and a whole pie, a whole plethora of things that contribute to solving this problem. Here is the percentage that training impacted that part of it. And that's why evaluation stays tactical instead of becoming influential. Now, a couple of key pieces with the new model. So, we don't start with content, we don't start with activities, we don't start with surveys, we start with level 4. What's the result leadership actually cares about? And that's always the first step. We ensure we're clarifying critical behaviors. But then we name the environment that our performers are going to be in. And we really talk about whether or not it's going to enable or be a barrier to that success. And we are constantly looking for ongoing evidence and pulling for that ongoing evidence. So at no point when someone asks for impact are we hitting that panic button. Now, most organizations will design forward, right? They'll analyze, design, develop, deliver, or implement, and then evaluate. But the model has to start by planning backwards from the very beginning. Understanding our level 4 result, defining those critical behaviors, creating the learning objectives that are observable and measurable that support those critical behaviors, and then how you're going to evaluate level 1. And when you begin with the end in mind, you design for performance, not just participation. So level 4 is the result that leadership actually cares about. But here's the truth that most people miss. Level 4 isn't hard because of data. It's hard because of partnerships. See, most organizations are truly swimming in data. It's everywhere, it's all around. No one knows what to do with it. They just start throwing it into Power BI reports and hope that magically they will figure out how to interpret it, or they just sit on it. For the learning function, we don't need to be tracking anything that is already tracked in the organization. We need to secure the access to that business data, to those stakeholders, and to those shared definitions of success. And here's the key shift in the new model. Results are not caused by training alone. They are influenced, though, by systems, leadership, and the environment. And that is contributive thinking, not attribution. So level 4's new definition is the degree to which targeted outcomes occur as a result of an experience or initiative and performance support. Now you'll notice that one of the other key shifts to the model is that we're trying to pull out as much of the training language. Because oftentimes when a problem comes to you, it's not even a training problem, right? All we need to do is maybe provide a job aid, maybe provide, a checklist, maybe just send out an email, a communications piece, right? It's the idea that we can now measure beyond just training using the Kirkpatrick model, and that a sit-down traditional training is not always the solution. Now, level 3 has 3 parts. We've got critical behaviors, performance support, and the performance environment. Level 3, this is the pivot point. Now, results change because behaviors change. If behaviors don't change, results won't change. And results only change, and behaviors only change when they're clearly defined, they are supported, and they are reinforced. And this is where most evaluation fails, because we measure if people learned, but not whether they can actually apply it in context. So we do some knowledge checks and maybe some assessments that, yeah, they can apply these skills, but in the environment of the classroom, whatever that classroom looks like, and we can talk about it broadly. But the key is, okay, in a simulated environment, I can do these things. But it's more important to know when they are back out on the job in their environment, right? And not in some sort of controlled environment, can they apply those skills? So level 3 is the degree to which the target audience performs the critical behaviors in its environment and is supported in and accountable for its performance. So the first piece of level 3 is critical behaviors, really defining what are the 3, 5 to 7 behaviors that must be done in order to get to your level 4 result. Then we talk about performance support. And if you're familiar with the model, as Jim and Wendy updated it, we used to call it required drivers. These are the things that must be put into place to reinforce, encourage, and reward behaviors. So these can be things like job aids, checklists, coaching, right? We did an evaluation with or an impact study for the Department of Defense and their coaching program. And we found that for every dollar they spend, that's actual money or, in time and like salaries and things like that, they get $19 worth of a return because people are being put through that coaching program, because it's shortening that time from a training intervention to actual impact. And it's helping people, not persons, I can speak. It's helping people actually get the support they need in the moment of need. And so that's why when you think about like, how do you design training, we have to get out of, okay, I'm going to design the one training and like the experience, like, okay, that's great. That's the foundation. That's the start. You have to also have, what are people going to reach for when they are back out on the job? How are they going to get that support? They're not going to go back to your learning management system. They probably can't search in it. Most learning management systems really stink at search functionality, and I've evaluated a lot of them. So they're not going back to the LMS. They want to be able to pull things in the moment of need. You want to know, how are your managers supporting behavior happening, right? Managers need to be part of co-creating and ensuring that performance happens. And then how are we rewarding people? Yeah, you can reward people monetarily, but that's not reality for most organizations. Quite frankly, a lot of people just want to shout out and just to be seen and just to know that someone recognizes that they are putting in the work. And then that last piece is the performance environment. So the performance environment is probably the most important concept in the entire model. The environment will make or break impact. Because if people don't have the time, tools, manager support, psychological safety, nothing changes. And 9 times out of 10, you don't have a training problem. You have a systems problem. So the performance environment is the setting in which critical behaviors will be performed. It includes tangible factors such as opportunity to apply, time between learning the skill and actually applying those skills, access to resources and managerial support, as well as cultural elements like motivation, recognition, psychological safety, and organizational norms. So I'm going to give you a very clear example on this, one that we struggle with at Kirkpatrick. So we have certification programs. And when I came in, I remember going to a conference, and one of our customers at the end of, it was like a 3-hour workshop, at the end of the 3-hour workshop, I didn't even know that they were there. She calls me over and she's like, hey, can you come talk to us? And I'm like, hey, sure. She's like, we've invested a lot of money in the certification programs, and we're just not seeing like why we're even spending the money. Like, nothing has changed. And I was like, okay, so we're gonna do this. Let's have this conversation. Like, wow. And they were lovely. Everything ended up well. But what I said to them was, The problem is not necessarily they didn't learn those skills, because we can see that they've learned how to do those skills. They actually have to do a capstone assignment and we grade them. There's actually no assessment to our certification programs. But tell me more about what it's like back in your organization. Are they encouraged to actually create these new skills? Did you put them through thinking this one person or 10 people were going to change the entire culture of this branch of the military? I said, can I ask you something? Did you change the policy that states that those participants are not allowed to talk to trainees after they leave their training program? Well, no. Okay, how are we going to measure level 3? It's not just about the training program. Now, trust me, training programs, even our certification programs could always be improved. I believe in continuous improvement and continuous learning. But the fact is that what training essentially does, it's the fishbowl analogy, right? You take the fish, the dirty fish, out of the fishbowl, you clean them up, maybe you teach them some new tricks, and then you take that fish and you put it back into the dirty fishbowl. And then you're shocked when that fish gets dirty again so quickly. And it's like, yeah, well, nothing changed about the environment in which they are in. So they're not being rewarded for these new skills. They don't have the ability to change how we do things. One of the challenges is that, folks, we think that culture change is a 1-year shift. Like, so one person in 1 year can shift an entire organization. I am here to tell you, culture and organizations take minimum 5 to 10 years to change, at least. And so we've got to be more realistic. What we've got to do is satisfy. We want those dopamine hits. We want that satisfaction that things are changing and occurring. Trust me, if I ate a salad for lunch, I'm gonna assume I'm gonna be down a few pounds tomorrow just because I ate a salad for lunch. If I took my one reward, right, my one thing. That's the same thing that organizations see and that executives see. So we've got to build in these small dopamine hits and these small progress marks to show, hey, we're working towards that end goal and that end state. Sorry, John. Brinkerhoff pointed out that if the work environment doesn't support or agree with the training, the acquired skills will not be enforced. So the question might be asked, has there been an acute job analysis to align the training with the workplace? Absolutely. And what I've actually seen, and I've worked with a few organizations recently, is that it's not necessarily the job analysis or the that needs to be aligned if there's an issue with policy and what's actually happening in the workforce. And unfortunately for these groups, they're a state agency. They're like, I can't train to what happens in the field. I have to train to policy, and it puts them in a really tough predicament, and actually some job losses, unfortunately. So I'd love to hear from you in organizations that you've worked with or that you're currently working in. What are some of the things that are blocking behavior change in your organization? And feel free, again, we're a smaller group, so if you want to come off mute, I am all about it. You don't have to just drop things into the chat.
Yeah, this is John. I talk faster than I write. You're correct. Policy has a lot to do with what's happening out in the workplace. If the ethos, the vision statements, the mission statements, the innovations that and motivations that's supposed to inspire the workers to reach a certain goal. If all of that is not in alignment, they're working against each other. I've been in organizations that initially the ethos was we are a employee centric organization, But as time went on, what actually was reinforced that no, money is actually and profit is actually what's going on. And so whatever you're doing, it all has to be focused on that. And if we have to eliminate your jobs to do that, then that's what's going to happen. So if that environment is in place and that mindset is in place, it is all of those factors are working against what's supposed to be happening, and the outcomes, the products that the workplace is supposed to be accomplishing, they keep butting heads with each other.
Yes, they truly do. Thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like a lot of others. I saw some shaking, some agreement, but also some things popping into the chat. A lot of folks have also seen very similar situations. Wait, I just made that way too big now. I can't see past my water bottle. There we go. Geraldine shares resistance to change, and also there's change fatigue. Geraldine, preach change fatigue. When a company tries to make too many big changes at once, absolutely. And also whiplash of change, right? It feels like whenever there's a new big role that is open, that person wants to go in and change and upend everything that's been done because they want to like put their stamp on it. I volunteer for an organization and I sat on the executive board of it 2 years ago. Yeah. And I used to say the same thing. I'm like, it feels like every time someone comes in, they want to come in and they want to change everything because they want to make their stamp and, like, I guess, put their stamp on history here. And the really nice thing is that we ended up getting into a rhythm unintentionally, right? Where, I had my predecessor, she and I worked well together, and I was in a position of influence. So some of those things, we didn't have to change everything. I was able to add some new things. And then my successor, she looked at me, she's like, I'm just gonna keep doing what you just did because things are working. And no one really feels the need to start to change things, because we realize when you just come in and you just change things, it's more about yourself and the ego and not what is best for the organization. So I couldn't agree more to that one. For Sarah, I think for us, there's a lot of noise about what we can or should be doing with new technology. Absolutely. It's hard to know what to pay attention to. Couldn't agree more. Elizabeth, we see a lot of, we have always done it this way. That is the biggest killer of an organization. The biggest innovation killer is, well, we've always done it this way, so why are we going to change? Absolutely. Robert, resistance to actually measure the things we want to know later. If you want to know recall, have a post test. If you want an application, you may need to change the way you test knowledge retention. Yep. To include application or extend the measurement metrics beyond seat time. Absolutely.
And Vanessa, I'll just add, I'm on a project now that they're very concerned about measurement. They really want to know that everybody has actually learned. Nobody's talking about how the only way to find out if somebody has actually learned is the next time they mess up or don't, or if they succeed in some big noticeable way, right? That's the only data point, but we're not standing behind people with a clipboard checking things off. And then on one piece of the training elements, they also actively decided to remove the post-course assessment. So we don't even have that data with which to balance whether or not they actually learned in the class. So it's a bit of a mess, but they just don't want to.
I would only challenge post-tests for this one reason. I feel like post-tests, depending on when they're distributed, feels like cramming before, like, for the test. You know what I mean? So have they actually retained? Because I could pass a test, and I passed a lot of tests because I studied really hard the night before. I don't remember a lot of that, right? And so one of the things we actually do in the book, and we talk about, is also what's the timing for level 2? Because to your point, you do want to know whether or not they learned something in the classroom, but sequencing it in a way or positioning it in a way where you could actually know that they've learned something and they're actually retaining it, because that second part is crucial.
100%, right? And a lot of this timing presentation, right? If I give you a term and definition and immediately ask you on the next slide what it is, right? I'm probably not giving you enough time to forget it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, thank you all. So let's actually move on to level 2 since we started talking about it a little bit. Level 2 is all about capability and readiness. Do they know it? Can they do it? Do they believe in it? Will they try it? But again, learning alone is not going to drive results. So level 2 is the degree to which the target audience acquires the intended knowledge, skills, attitude, confidence, and commitment necessary to achieve targeted outcomes. See, most of us are actually evaluating only knowledge and skills. But attitude, confidence, and commitment, these are the things that will tell us and help be predictors of what might happen, or what is likely to happen, I should say, at level 3, or back out on the job. And so these are also things that will tell us more about the environment and what may or may not be a barrier that we can then address. And so I recommend really thinking about the assessments that you do, right? And how are you assessing these 5 key component areas, and how can you ensure that you're using the right type of assessment, right? Because I can tell you, I've been guilty of this. To be clear, I did not write this assessment. I was just the e-learning developer, so I'm not saying that I did this. I was the recipient of a bad assessment. You know, I shared that I did a lot of software training. I created like 600 e-learns for different customers on a specific CRM, and some instructional designers would give me an assessment that was put the steps in order to do this in order, kind of like a multiple choice type question. And I would look at it and I'm like, that is just lazy. That's not going to be helpful when they actually get out into the field. Okay, great. They could actually put them in some sort of order. Anyone could kind of look at, what the process is and figure that one out. I want to actually give them a sandbox and ask them to actually try and to do it themselves. So really thinking about what's the right assessment, to your point, Robert, to assess what it is that we're looking to gain more information about. And then finally, we've got level 1, and it's not about happiness. It's about alignment. And did the experience support the work that matters? And level 1 is the degree to which the target audience finds an experience or initiative engaging, relevant, and supportive of the work needed to achieve the targeted outcomes. But that's not the only change to the model. See, we don't just report on one metric. We don't just report ROI. We actually believe more on return on expectations. So really ensuring we're aligned with stakeholders on their expectations and what is the return, and did we meet what it is that they were looking for. But we now take it a step further and we talk about return on performance. What is the return on changing these behaviors? Because for many people, many organizations, they don't actually care about a financial calculation, right? Like, yes, most organizations want to be good stewards of the funding that they receive, and there is some sort of tracking of that. But for a lot of organizations, they're trying to ensure warfighters are coming back from the battlefields. They're trying to ensure children are more safe in the homes that they're going to. There's no financial calculation to that. What they're actually more looking about is a return on performance. And then that final piece of it is the contributive ROI. What piece of the whole puzzle, the whole system, did training contribute to that final, that business result? So again, like I said, I can never give you a calculation of like training led you to this ROI, because that's truly not how it works. We go to training and then, maybe, we continue to have reps, we continue to have practice. Maybe someone built a little cheat sheet that they keep at their desk. And if I ask them, hey, how did you learn this skill? What was the most impactful piece of all of the pieces that helped you learn the skills? Many times they're going to say that little cheat sheet, because it was just sitting at my desk right there. So when I was actually in that moment of doing things, I had that cheat sheet. And now, because I've done it so many times, it's second nature. And when you have this combination of ROE, ROP, and CROI, that combination gives leaders confidence. Doesn't give them false certainty. It gives them credible evidence. And at this point, what we see most organizations do is they try to solve problems by collecting more data, more dashboards, more surveys, more reports. But the fact is that more data doesn't solve the problem. And we don't need to just have surveys. What we need to do is have quantitative and qualitative forms of feedback. And for the different metrics that we're measuring, have multiple sources and multiple methods. But more data alone won't solve the problem that we have. We need to have a system for turning data into decisions. And that's where we really focus on this capability gap. See, a lot of organizations, they know the model, they know the levels. Where they struggle, is actually applying the model and actually putting it into practice. And until they can put the model into practice properly, they cannot lead and influence with the model. And I want to leave you with this. We need to shift from reporting activity to guiding performance and using the data to influence those decisions. Because evaluation is not a reporting function, it's a leadership capability. Because when you can answer, did it work, with credible evidence, that is when your influence changes, and that's when you can go from order taker to strategic business partner. And so I want to take a moment for y'all to think about, and maybe jot down on like a sticky note or a piece of paper, or maybe like your notes app in your phone. What's one concrete conversation you will initiate in the next 30 days to strengthen alignment and evaluation? And I want you to write today's date, which is March 20th. Your deadline is April 20th. Think about what conversation needs to happen within that time to take that first step. And then on April 20th, now that hopefully you all have connected with me on LinkedIn, I want you to message me and tell me how that conversation went and your next step from there. And while you're doing that, I'm just gonna kind of go through a couple of things and get to any other questions that you may have. So first things first is the book that Lisa mentioned earlier, Building a Culture of Evaluation, the new Kirkpatrick Model for Performance and Innovation. It's the next book in the Kirkpatrick series. It is set to release through ATD Press May 12th. They actually emailed me today about more marketing stuff, and we actually are going to be putting together a workshop to go along with the book, which we're very excited about. So you can pre-order it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or if you are a fan of Target, the coolest thing ever, I just realized the other day that you can order it through Target. So if you're a Red Card member, you can get your 5% off. But yes, you can order it today and then it'll be delivered to you after May 12th. Super excited and can't wait for it to be here. We have a free assessment that I'm actually going to pop the link into the chat for you all. So we built a learning maturity assessment because, you know, the big concept of the book is evaluation needs to be a whole cultural shift for an organization. And it can't just be about the training function evaluating their own way, the sales function their own way, HR their own way, leadership their own way. We all need to get on the same page, the same model, so we can also share data, right, back and forth. And so we can all understand, you know, the conversation that we're having. And a lot of functions will come to me, or learning teams will come to me and they'll say, you know, we're having trouble scaling Kirkpatrick, and how do we do this? And so I built this assessment because it's not just about the people having the skills, but there's all of these other pieces, including the understanding the environment, to help you understand whether or not you know, your kind of level of maturity to scale Kirkpatrick, because you might just not be mature enough yet to actually embed and scale evaluation. And so this assessment, it's totally free, will give you a score based on all of these different areas: optimization and governance, strategic alignment, performance design, behavior activation, and measurement and evaluation. And then once you get your score, you could actually book a call with me or a team member for a 30-minute, 90-day roadmap based on your assessment, and to kind of talk that one out. So that is in the chat. I also have, if I can click, there we go. So we've gotten our online platform. We call it the Kirkpatrick Collective. It's a community of practice for professionals where we have real case studies, we have tools and templates. All of our certifications live there for the price of what used to be one. We have live coaching labs, and we're really trying to put into practice what it is that we preach when it comes to really focusing more on level 3, because we know that knowing the model is not the same as leading with it, and you need support. So the Kirkpatrick Collective, you grab that link for you all as well, is available for you at any time. We actually have a special coupon code that I will get to at the end, to give you 15% off of that. We will also be on the road this year. So we'll be in Orlando at the end of April, in Phoenix in October, doing in-person certifications and our pop-ups, but also our event in Dallas, Robbie will be at. It is our in-person bronze and silver certification and the home of the 2026 Kirkpatrick Summit. So Orlando and Phoenix are really good for people just wanting to like get to know the model better and to be part of a workshop where we talk about stakeholder alignment and connection. Dallas is where we're going to talk a lot about the bigger, higher strategy things. And then one last thing, Caddy. So talk a lot about performance design, and I built Caddy to be the AI tool to help you do the development of performance design solutions faster. So it's our version of instructional design. And so within the tool, you can do needs assessments, you can create your training outline, build Kirkpatrick aligned evaluation plans, and develop learner personas. So I popped that into the chat. You can create a free account so you can play around with it. I actually just got feedback yesterday from one of the folks that is part of the free tier of Caddy, and she was like, it is a near final product based on the information that I put in it, and it saved me hours of time. And that's our goal, right? Our goal is to help use AI strategically, where we can do some of the analysis a little bit faster, get you 80% of the way there, so you can do that final 20% and focus on building relationships. And lastly, we've got Performance Impact Week. If you are interested in a free week of learning, it is hosted by myself, the Institute for Transfer Effectiveness, and Travado, an evaluation platform, and Noli, more behavior like nudging sort of platform. We have we'll have sessions every day from like 9 to 10:30 in the morning Eastern time. Everything will be recorded and again free. We'll start talking about aligning to the business, and then we'll end on Friday with talking about AI. And of course, please feel free to connect with me through the Kirkpatrick podcast. I have launched an episode almost every single week. If you want to see the video, because video is so much more fun, you can check out our Kirkpatrick Partners YouTube channel where I post all the videos. So with that, on the last slide, I've got the code HBD, happy birthday, Dawn, DON, for 15% off of your collective order. It's good until March 31st. And the reason for that is because March 15th was Dr. Don Kirkpatrick's birthday. And so we're celebrating it with 15% off of the collective. Okay, let me go back into the chat for any questions that you might have. But if you have anything that comes up, please feel free to come off mute and ask the questions directly. I think we're good on questions from the chat. Awesome. Cool. Any questions from anyone? Comments, concerns, hassles, feelings in the pit of your stomach? The pit of your stomach? That evaluation is still too hard?
Just a quick high-level conversation. So I'm sure you run into measurement pitfalls all the time, or at least the way that people think about assessment strategies, or even larger, right? Just what are they even trying to do? So what are some of like the kind of the more common, sort of more generalized things that you run into that also maybe just kind of make you smirk or laugh a little bit? Because sometimes we just can't kill a bad idea. It spreads like a virus. It's out there, and then people keep trying to do the same thing, and then you run into it again. But yeah, just wondering what you tend to see as kind of like common threads out there that we, of course, should avoid.
Yeah, common thread is assuming that a survey is going to give you all the data that you need. It's lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing about a survey is that it's scalable. I think the other common pitfall is undervaluing conversation and undervaluing the qualitative feedback that you receive, because there's a lot of gold in that. A common pitfall that we see is people will start with level 1 and then just, and I get this one intellectually, right? It's like you go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like you walk upstairs, starting from level 1 and assuming that they're going to get to level 4 is always the big one. And then the last one, there's a line in the book, I think I pop it up in the book twice, is there's like this quote that they say Albert Einstein said. It's like, if I had 55 minutes to develop a solution, I would spend 50 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes on the solution. And then one common pitfall that we have is we spend 5 minutes on the problem and 50 minutes on the solution. And we actually saw that. Robbie will tell you, because he was at the summit this year. That's one thing I noticed when in the, so our workshops are very interactive, and like you will practice, right? Like doing stakeholder engagement work and understanding the problem. I had to tell the summit attendees, like, y'all are spending way too much time. You're already at the solution. You have not dug in far enough on the problem. And I know that takes a lot of work, and it can feel challenging because you feel like you're always challenging your stakeholder. Well, we've got to put that to the side. Then the last one I will say is building relationships only when you need them. And so we will tend to engage stakeholders and try to gain their buy-in, like when we need something from them or we want something from them. This is my same thought about like networking. Like we only network for like our benefit. The fact is the more value you put out there, when you actually need someone, they will then feel compelled to help you, right? And so the more that you can just connect with folks in the organization and look at it as like networking, you're actually building up that stakeholder engagement, that stakeholder buy-in, so that when you do need them to align to a project, it's much easier pull over. And one of the best things that you can do to start some of that conversation is asking them what keeps you up at night. And that's going to give you a lot of information about them, the problems that they're having, and then give you some ideas to then come back to them in the future and be like, I thought about that problem. Let's think about trying this. And that's how you move from a training function to a performance function.
Excellent answer. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Vanessa, John asked a question. It is true attitudes, confidence, and commitment are great skill sets to transfer to the learners or employees. What instrument effectively accesses those skills, assesses whether or not those skills are acquired and applied?
Yeah. So we actually have assessment questions that we ask that measure their confidence and commitment, right? And so doing some of like these sort of activities of like these commitment checks and things like that. And then we actually just ask them, do you feel confident? We'll do a pre and a post for our programs and things like that. And that gives us more of an understanding. And I will say pre will tell us, like the pre-post can tell us if we've built some of that confidence. I think commitment, when I see that at the end, that's going to tell me more about whether or not there's a problem in the environment. And oftentimes it's the thing that we're talking about. When you go out in the field, they're like, forget everything you just learned. Training does not know how we do things here. And that's where that's like the first red flag for me to start to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I've been so far engaging with that in self-report and self-assessment and self-reflection, but I think we'll have better tools coming down the pipeline. I think there's more and more focus on looking at how to grow, develop, and assess dispositions, especially with the proliferation of all these new tools, right? We're realizing that that's really uncovering where our cracks are in the durable skills, right?
Yeah, and you know what I will tell you is technology is moving so rapidly. Like Wendy was telling me she got an email from, I don't know if y'all are familiar with ThreadUp. They're like an online consignment store. And if anyone needs a job, sorry. And she said, I clicked on the link and it took me, like it was about my experience, it took me to this like chatbot, and the questions changed based on what I was saying. And she's like, and I knew this is a survey, right? Like Wendy Kirkpatrick, I think I know, right? And she's like, but they got so much more data out of me because it felt more like a conversation, and the next question felt tailored to what I was asking. And so I think we've got a lot of really great opportunities. That's why I also, like, one of the tools that were Noli that I was mentioning that we really love, we loved when we were able to partner with them, is because they're this nudging platform. So it will send, so we've, for all of our certification programs, we have them created where before the program starts, they're starting to get like emails, or sometimes you could do text if you want, to get them to ask them questions, to give you feedback. But we also have a track for their manager. So we could also keep the manager informed as like what's going on. And so thank you, Robert. And we tell the manager like, hey, this is like, you're gonna wanna have a conversation at this point about this, because this is what we're talking about. Here's some guiding questions. And then we're gonna tell them, hey, your participant has just received their certification. Here's some ways that you can, recognize them and things like that, and shout them out. So it's really cool to see how quickly technology is giving us that ability to scale. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, Lisa, you're muted.
Thank you. I forgot to say thank you before we went to Q&A, so I could chop that off before people started talking. But so I'll just say thank you right now. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I loved hearing about the changes. I think they're very insightful and very timely, and I'm super excited to read the book. And I just really appreciate your generosity coming here today and sharing with most of our students and alum, and that's pretty cool too, to see such a huge turnout for this presentation as well. So I think that speaks volumes to people's sense of value for what you're offering them. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Well, it's nice to see you all. And again, please do connect me on LinkedIn. Any other questions, reach out.